How's it going, guys? Today we're learning how to utilize the velocity menu in the Alesis Strike module. Alright, so you want to get better at editing and making your own kits. This is one of the most powerful features of the Alesis Strike module, especially if you're trying to use layers and blend two samples together. This will be extremely helpful to get the sound that you want. So let's get to it. First, you want to go to your module, hit the voice button. This is where you normally select your instruments, and from there, hit the F3 button, which brings you to the velocity menu. And we're going to go in depth in all these parameters, but just as a quick overview, velocity level has to do with the volume level of the velocities that you're playing back, so you can adjust how loud some of the velocities are being played. Velocity filter is directly correspondent to the high or low pass filter that you have going on in the tone menu, as well as the cutoff value that you have dialed in. Velocity decay corresponds with the decay value in the level menu, and velocity pitch adjusts the pitch in the tuning of the instrument, corresponding to the tuning that you have dialed in the tone menu. And again, all these parameters are velocity sensitive, and we're going to get in depth right now. Starting with the left side of the screen, the velocity limit is actually where you're deciding at which velocity that the layer will start being played, or of course cut off if you're going the opposite way. So I'm going to demonstrate this really quickly using a snare drum sample, and I'll raise it up from 0, and then on the opposite end I will lower it from 127 so you can hear the effect. Alright, so you can hear how as I raised it up from 0, it was cutting off buzz rolls, and from 127 it was cutting off rim shots. And normally if this is just on one layer, might not be ideal, as you're not, you're cutting off where the sample's playing. But if you're blending two samples, this is extremely helpful if some of them aren't playing nicely together at a certain point, or if that's just where you want a sample to cut off. And unlike the other parameters on the right, this is the only one that's also available in the level menu. So you have access to this as you're blending samples and deciding instruments all in the same menu. Now moving on to the 4 parameters on the right, starting with velocity level. This one is basically just deciding how dynamic you want your sample to be played. So at 99, it would be the most dynamic, so the biggest volume difference between your light hits and your hard hits. And as you adjust this lower from 99, you're basically bringing up the volume level of the softer hits. So let me demonstrate this really quickly on a snare drum so you can hear the effect that this is having. So you can hear how the buzz rolls eventually got really loud, like almost as loud as the rim shots, right? And this can be really helpful, if you don't feel like you're hearing your ghost notes or, tight little articulations on the snare, you can start lowering this number, bringing it up a little bit so you can hear it a lot better in the mix. So on to the velocity filter. Now, the velocity filter parameter is directly linked to whichever filter that you have selected in the tone menu, high pass or low pass. And the value 00 is also linked to wherever you have the cutoff value in the tone menu. And the first thing I want to do is bring up a graphic of what a low and high pass is so you can see and understand what exactly you're doing with these filters. So for instance, a high pass filter is just a filter that rolls off lower frequencies to let the highs pass through. Likewise, a low pass would do the opposite and roll off the high frequencies to let the lows pass through. So now getting back into the module, looking at the cutoff value, 00 would equal the lower frequencies and 99 would equal the higher frequencies. So if you have high pass selected, you'd want to start the cutoff at 00 and then roll up from there as you're taking away more and more of the lower frequencies, and the opposite for the low pass. So back to our velocity menu, this velocity filter adjustment is going to allow us to manipulate the cutoff as we play through our velocities. So for instance, if you have a bass drum that's really nice and full and warm when you play it soft, but when you start to lay into it, the low end just gets really out of control and takes over the mix. Well, the cool thing about this is that we can adjust this filter in real time. So this is what I have for an example today is a really warm kick that I like the sound of, but just gets really out of control when I hit it hard. So I want to dial in a high pass filter and set the cutoff all the way to 0 because I want all the lows to come through in my softer hits. Now, when I go to my velocity filter adjustment, remember the 0, 0 is linked to wherever the cutoff is. So anything lower won't have an effect. But as I raise up from 0, 0, I'm going to start to raise that up, and you'll notice as I hit the bass drum harder, it's going to start to tighten up on the low end because I'm raising up that filter to get rid of some of those resonating lows. So you can hear as I raised that filter up, it tightened up the low end only on the higher velocities and left it open on the softer playing, which is exactly what I wanted. And of course, the opposite effect of warming up the sample at the higher velocities can be achieved by using the low pass, starting the cutoff higher, and then dropping down the value in the velocity filter into the negative. So that is the velocity filter adjustment in a nutshell. Moving on to velocity decay, like the filter, the 0, 0 value in velocity decay is directly correspondent to where you have the decay value set in the level menu. And because this is a velocity sensitive adjustment, say for instance you have a snare drum, you like the way and how open the snares are on the buzz roll, but when you hit a rim shot, it rings way too much. Well, instead of just cutting the decay off in the level menu and cutting all the decay off all the time, you can leave it all the way to 99, and under the velocity menu, you can lower this decay value down enough to where when you hit a rim shot, it tightens it up and doesn't let the ring through, but you still get all the natural snare buzz and ambience on the lower velocities. And that's actually what I'm going to demonstrate for you right now. I have a snare that I like the buzz rolls, but I want to keep it tight on the higher velocities. And after that, I'll show you how you can tighten up the lower velocities and leave the higher rim shots and stuff more open. So hopefully you can tell this can be a very powerful tool when you're dialing in your samples to get them to respond how you prefer, especially if you like the way that they sound in a certain velocity range or the other. You can actually maintain that character throughout all the velocities. Last but not least, we have the velocity pitch parameter. This, like the velocity filter and decay parameters, the value of 0, 0 is correspondent to wherever you have the pitch set of the sample in the tone menu. But unlike filter and decay, for the most part in stock form, all the samples will be set with the tuning at 0, which means your velocity pitch value will be able to lower or raise the pitch of the sample as you near the higher velocity or the harder hit. At the same time, if you tuned the sample in the tone menu all the way down, you would only be able to affect that signal with the velocity pitch by turning the value into the positive. That being said, let's show you an example of how this velocity pitch feature can affect a set of toms in a really pleasing way by raising the pitch as you near the higher velocities. And just keep in mind, because these are velocity sensitive parameters, the more that you push these levels in the velocity menu higher or lower, the sooner they will start to take an effect as you near the top velocity. But as you can hear, any of these features can be used to a very subtle effect. Like I did with these toms, it just added a little bit more pop to the higher velocities, and I thought it made them sound really great. Also, something you might have noticed with the velocity pitch parameter is when the tuning is set to 0, you can bend the pitch lower and higher. The same thing can be achieved with decay and filter if you have the cutoff or the decay set anywhere in between the extreme high or the extreme low. So, like for instance, if you like the decay set all the time at say 70, At that point in the velocity decay parameter, you would be able to lengthen or shorten the decay using the velocity decay value. Just keep in mind, wherever you have the corresponding parameter is adjusting where the 0 value under the velocity menu is starting from. So in this case, if the decay is set at 70, you can only add in the velocity decay 30 before it becomes nullified, and likewise negative 70 would be the lowest you can go before you wouldn't notice any more effect. And the same principle can be applied to the velocity filter parameter by adjusting the cutoff value under the tone menu. So I think that just about covers everything with this velocity menu. I think the video is probably long enough. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching all the way through. Give me a like, share this video for anybody that doesn't know about these velocities, and I'll see you guys very soon.